was going to talk today about filtering everything through love. I mean, and that literally means you filter all your things through love. Whether it's in your relationships, your emotions, your philosophy, your religion, your politics, how you interact with coworkers, whatever it is, filter everything through love. It's kind of like that. Remember that saying a couple years ago, or well, probably several years ago, WWJD, what would Jesus do? Well, it sort of goes along with that because you have to say, well, what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus is going to always do the thing that aligns with love. So to understand what Jesus would do, you do what love would do. And what is love? Well, love is a lot of things. We all intuitively know what love is. But let's look at some concrete things. Love sees the dignity in all people. It sees the dignity in the other person and the value of others. Love sees the equality in others. Love sees the kindness and compassion for others and seeks to be at peace with yourself and with others. You could look at like the 9 fruits of the Holy Spirit as an example. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. The other 8 often reflect the principle of love. Joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So try to emulate those qualities in emulating love, as well as compassion and dignity. And, like, how does this affect like your personal relationship? Always try to stop and see, what would the loving response be? Because sometimes we get emotionally worked up and we're angry and we lash out. But if you could step back for a minute, step outside yourself for a minute and say, what would love do in this situation? Because even if you're right and the other person is wrong, would love lash out? Would love be abusive? Would love um, be cruel or unkind? Even someone that's in the wrong? The answer is no. So it's kind of being mindful. Remember mindfulness, where you sort of step outside yourself, you analyze it as a third party bystander. Say, what would love do in this situation? Taking time to step back, taking time to not react. Take a deep breath. What would love do? Say a prayer, whatever you need to do. And this is something you can do in meditation as you start to reflect on your relationships. You start to reflect on different areas of your life. What is the correct response? And you can ask yourself, God or your higher self, what is the proper response within the context of love? And if you sit in stillness, you generally get the right answer. You know deep down when something equates to love or not. You really, if you're honest with yourself, you can't fool yourself. And so you do that in your relationships. How would it affect politics? Well, love doesn't seek to force things on other people. So I think that's why I'm so drawn to a more libertarian way of thinking, because we emphasize voluntariness and cooperation over coercion, over forcing people to do this or that. And so you seek to voluntarily allow people to choose, and then through cooperation, you make positive changes in society. And it emphasizes freedom because freedom gives people options, and it recognizes the dignity and autonomy of other people, the value of other people to make their own decisions in their life as opposed to just having the government force this or that on them. And, sometimes this can be kind of controversial because, you know, I I didn't support the lockdowns. I didn't support mask mandates. I certainly didn't support vaccine mandates. We are forcing things onto people's bodies. A mask. You're forcing artificial substances into someone's body against their will. You're forcing people to remain in their home against their will. I can't get behind those things. And as we found out later, those things really didn't work too well. They actually caused more harm in most cases than good. And that's a lot of times how this works, that usually the forced approach may look like a good one on the surface, but a lot of times it ends up causing more harm than good. So, voluntary cooperation is always preferable and more in accord with love than coercion. And you can look at like other areas too, like, if you're a Christian, you're reading the Bible. You have to read the Bible through the filter of love. And see, that's where some groups now and historically have gone astray. If you're not reading through the filter of love, you can go astray. And there's many examples of this. You can look at something like eternal punishment or endless punishment. If you just read your English Bible, you won't understand some of the deeper truths. You'll just say, well, I don't really like the teaching of endless torment, but I see it when I read the Bible. And so you'll go along with it. And sometimes if you have certain prejudices or preconceived ideas, again, you can go astray. But a lot of times as you read through the principle of love, and you're like, okay, I just read this in English and it doesn't really groove deep within my soul that's correct. And then guess what? You go back to the original languages. You start looking at the word for it translated eternal, which is aeonios in the Greek. The root word is aeon, is age. So it's really saying age lasting punishment, or in a better translation would be correction, age lasting correction. And so it puts a new perspective on it. Oh, okay. So it doesn't necessarily have to be endless. It's within an age or a indeterminate period of time. And when you start studying punishments more about correction, it's like, oh, okay. And it's like love can cause you to dig a little bit deeper and to question maybe what you've been taught or what your modern English translation may appear to say. And there's other controversial things too, like, should women be pastors? Oh boy, that's a big one, because you'll go to a scripture like I think it's First Timothy 2:12 or Second Timothy, one of those two, but it's 2:12 Timothy, and it says, "I do not permit a woman to teach or hold authority over a man." And you're like, ooh. And you read that in the English translation, it's like, okay, well, what do you do? But intuitively, something doesn't ring true about it. And you don't have to be, a raging feminist to see, okay, This doesn't ring true. Is this a cultural prejudice or what's going on here? And I can even remember a pastor friend of mine was like, this is what I believe because I see it in the Bible. But if it was up to me, I'd let women be pastors. So intuitively, he's saying it doesn't really make sense deep down, but I go along with it because that's what he believes it says. Okay. And that too creates a problem because not only violates the underlying dignity of a woman and makes her essentially eternally uh, sub uh, subjugated under the thumb of men. Um, but it also raises the question: how is it that I, within my heart, am operating at a higher level, a more loving principle than when I'm reading? You know, I can see deep down within myself that, just uniformly rejecting women as pastors doesn't make sense. I can see that endless punishment doesn't make sense. But yet, this is forced upon me because of what I've always been taught and what you read in a modern English translation or what have you. But it's the same thing here. Love will say, well, let's go a little bit deeper. Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's see what's being said here because maybe it's not what you think is being said there. And lo and behold, like with eternal punishment, when you get into like a Greek interlineary and you start looking at more literal translations like the Young's literal, um, there's a Greek word that says usurp. I do not allow a woman to teach or usurp authority over a man. So this was teaching and holding authority in a way that was abusive, that was usurping over someone else. And, you could kind of think of it as like acting like a cult. You have a cult leader and they are abusive in how they exercise authority in their teaching. It's kind of like that. And you see, like also in the book of Revelations, it says, I do not like the Nicolaitans because they lord it over everyone. So it's sort of conveying the idea there that a woman should not usurp or abusively teach and hold authority, not that she can't hold authority. And something I've sort of come to on this is I believe in what I would call the mutual authority model, to where we as a congregation hold authority mutually together. It's a shared authority. The elders mutually hold authority together, the deacons authority together, men and women authority together. And the authority ultimately streams from the power of God. So as long as one person isn't usurping and saying, I'm the authority and you're down here, that's fine. But they hold authority in a mutual sense with everyone else. And so, maybe in an individual context, I'm the one that's specifically teaching right at this moment, or I'm the one that's sort of guiding because maybe I have a little more life experience. I'm shepherding, which is what a pastor means, to shepherd. I have a bit more maturity in that sense. So I'll guide, but my ultimate authority comes from God, and I hold it mutually with everyone else. And when you hold the mutual authority, a man is never over a woman, or is a woman over a man, but we mutually share everything in our authority that we ultimately get from God. And that's the mutual authority model that I sort of um, came to myself probably about a year ago. And it seems to sort of make sense. And really too, when you think of a pastor or a deacon or a leader in the church, they shouldn't be someone that's like way up here and the congregation's down here. It's they mutually share their authority with the other deacons and elders and the congregation. And then, but because they happen to be have a bit more maturity, they help to guide others that maybe have a little less maturity. But there's a mutuality to the authority that they express. And I think that's the better model in general for any kind of leadership, you know. And I think that sort of fits with the libertarian model of a non-hierarchical structure. You know, we may play different functions in a religious body, a church. We may play different functions in a social setting or political setting, but that ultimately we don't have these hierarchies where this person's way up here and everyone else is way down here. It needs to be more of a mutually shared authority, and I express my gift maybe in a certain context to help others. Kind of what you might call servant leadership. But that's about all I'm saying. And I guess I'll go ahead and lead us in a meditation. And this is something that maybe you can do during your meditation is how can I filter all things through love? And let's just go ahead and do that. Close your eyes, get comfortable. Just taking a few deep breaths. Breathe in deeply through your nose. Hold and exhale. Take another deep breath. And exhale. Breathe in deeply. And exhale. Taking one final deep breath. Breathe in deeply. And exhale. Just imagine yourself at the beach. It's a beautiful warm day, blue skies. You can hear the ocean. Maybe hear some birds in the background. It's very calm and tranquil. Let's take a moment to see yourself, visualize yourself at the beach. Feel the sand on your feet. Feel the warmth of the sun. Maybe you feel a cool breeze in the air, just ever so slight. Take a moment to fill your heart with love, to allow a white light from within your heart to just beam and surround your whole being with love, sort of like in a cocoon of love. Just take a moment and just visualize yourself, imagine yourself wrapped in white light and pure love. How can you filter all of your life through love? Think of your relationships. Maybe there's a difficult person or people you love. How can you filter it through love? What can you do to see things from a more loving position? Just take a moment to see every situation with these loved ones from a more loving position. in my day-to-day life, how can I be more loving in the words that I speak, in the thoughts that I think, in the actions that I do? How can I be more loving, even if it's small? In the political arena, where people are so divided and everything is so contentious, how can I see this through the filter of love? I may have strong opinions about this or that in politics, but how can I bring more love to the issue? Maybe my position stays the same, but how can I approach it in a more loving way? Regardless of what the issue is, what the candidate or person is, how can I approach this in a more loving way? How can I approach those on the other end, supporting another candidate, supporting another view on the position? How can I see them in a more loving way? Try to just send forth love and compassion to those that disagree with you. Just do that right now for a moment. Now, in the same vein, how can I find ways to bring people together in love? Like, what are ways we can, even small, move towards each other in love? I'm not talking about I'm going to win you to my position, you're going to win me to your position. But how can we come together in love, form coalitions of love? In your religious or spiritual beliefs, how can you filter them through greater love? Maybe you hold very strong religious or spiritual beliefs, but do they conform perfectly to love? Do you, deep down in your heart, know that maybe you may need to slightly modify some of your beliefs? Maybe you don't totally change it. Maybe you stay basically the same, but you conform your understanding to greater love. How can you do that? What's that going to look like for you? Now let's go back to the beach. The warm sun, the sand, the beauty all around us. We're going to be coming back. Taking one final deep breath in through your nose and exhale through your mouth. When you're ready, you may open your eyes.